India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has landed in Berlin. After Germany, Prime Minister Modi will also visit Denmark and France. This happens to be the Indian Prime Minister's first visit abroad this year. While in Berlin, he will be holding crucial bilateral talks with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. The two leaders will co-chair the 6th edition of the India-Germany Intergovernmental Consultations. Several other ministers from both the sides will participate in the high-level talks. Prime Minister Modi will also interact with the Indian diaspora in Germany. The next stop will be Copenhagen, where the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, has invited Prime Minister Modi. He will participate in the second India-Nordic Summit hosted by Denmark. Prime Minister Modi will interact with other Nordic leaders, including the Prime Ministers of Iceland, Norway, Sweden and Finland. He will also attend an India-Denmark Business Forum. India's Prime Minister will then meet the Indian community in Denmark. WION's principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal is now joining us live from the heart of the action in Berlin. Siddhant, you of course have been bringing us all the updates on the Indian Prime Minister's crucial visit. This happens to be Prime Minister Modi's first visit abroad this year. He's scheduled to meet, of course, the new German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. The Ukraine conflict, however, is looming large in the backdrop. Tell us more.
Well, I'm standing in front of the hotel where the Prime Minister is due to shortly arrive, and with me are members of the Indian diaspora. Let me just talk to them first and give you a flavor of what they have in store for the Prime Minister. So what do you think about the visit, and how do you plan to welcome the Prime Minister?
First of all, we are very much excited. We have been living here since a long time, and it's first time we would get a chance to see him in physical. And yes, we are very excited to see him, and we expect a lot of talks, and we would be following him throughout the day in the city. So yeah, looking forward to it.
So members of the diaspora are clearly excited, and in a short while from now the Prime Minister arrives here, and it's a packed day for the Indian Prime Minister here in Berlin. There are two components of the visit. First, of course, the meeting, the hard diplomacy, the conversation with the German leadership, the German Chancellor, which of course is the first in-person meeting between the two leaders since the new Chancellor came in. We know that it's part of the intergovernmental consultations. The last such intergovernmental consultation took place in the year 2019, when the then Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, had visited New Delhi. But it is the diaspora event that will provide colour to the entire day, essentially with the address of the Prime Minister.
Absolutely, Siddhant. And as we just saw, the Prime Minister's popularity is very evident in Germany, in Berlin. He's scheduled, of course, to meet the German Chancellor, the new Chancellor. But as we were discussing earlier, the Ukraine conflict is, of course, top of the agenda. Energy security is another topic that is likely to come up in this trip to Europe. Tell us more about that.
Well, there is indeed the shadow of the Russian invasion of Ukraine on the entire visit, whether it's here in Germany or in Denmark or in Paris. And essentially, the European side will be raising and talking about this concern. In fact, we have been in Berlin for now 2 days, and the city is essentially standing up with solidarity with the Ukrainians. There are flags everywhere, Ukrainian flags, and there are posters, stop the war. And of course, it looks like the city is standing strongly with the Ukrainians. But largely, if you look at the political actions in Germany when it comes to Ukraine, we have seen change in position from standing with Russia to then taking strong actions against Russia, sanctions. And if you look at the coalition dynamics here in Germany, there is more pressure. There are more pulls and pressure when it comes to taking more action against Russia because of this invasion. And it is logical and natural that the German side will try to persuade India to also take a harder look at the situation. We know that yesterday the Indian Foreign Secretary, the new Indian Foreign Secretary, had done a briefing in which there were several questions on how much this will be part of the conversation. And he pointed out to India's stance, calling for the hostilities to be stopped, and of course direct talks. The Indian Prime Minister has spoken to both the Ukrainian president and the Russian president and calling that they should sit down for conversation. But it looks like it will be long days ahead for the Ukrainians, even as the invasion continues.
Right, absolutely. Siddhant, just a final question there. Tell us a little bit more about some of the big announcements that may come from this trip. As we've been reporting, India was at the center of a diplomatic conversation last few weeks. We had a lot of European leaders as well as other leaders visiting the country for crucial bilateral conversations. And now this, of course, is the Prime Minister Modi's first Europe trip this year. So what can we expect for the Indian diaspora as well as the Indians who are looking forward to working in Europe or studying in Europe?
Well, there will be two major announcements. One, of course, on the energy sector. Renewables, clean technology are areas where there have been conversations in the past, but there will be deliverables later in the day today. Secondly, on the G7 invite, Germany plans to invite India for the G7 summit. This is something that has been happening in the past as well. Each presidency has been keen to get India on board. The French presidency in 2019 invited India. Then, of course, we saw Trump was keen to invite India, but the summit could not happen because of the COVID pandemic. Then the British invited India. Then, of course, the COVID played its role. The Indian Prime Minister could not participate. But this year, the summit happens next month, and there will be an announcement on that. You talked about education. I have been speaking to a lot of Indians here ahead of the arrival of the Indian Prime Minister, and of course the diaspora event. Most of them, in fact, 90% of these Indians are students who have come to Germany and now plan to settle in Germany, and that perhaps will help in the relationship, because when it comes to relationship between two countries, it is the people-to-people contact that forms the bedrock of any relationship.
Absolutely, Siddhant. Thanks so much for all those updates. Thanks for joining us on WION. We will, of course, keep coming to you for more updates once the Prime Minister begins his crucial meetings. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has officially kick-started a crucial visit to Europe. This is his first foreign trip in the year 2022. There are a lot of issues on the agenda, a post-COVID global recovery, and he will soon be meeting with the new German Chancellor Olaf Scholz for a bilateral conversation. But of course, there is the shadow of the Russia-Ukraine war that is still looming over this visit. Remember, India so far has exercised a balanced approach when it comes to its ties with both Russia and Ukraine, and has refused to take a stance and has always called for a peaceful resolution through dialogue of this ongoing conflict. But the Ukraine conflict is likely to dominate the agenda as well, along with other issues such as energy security. This, of course, is a three-nation Europe visit where Prime Minister Modi is set to meet world leaders, including German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Denmark's Prime Minister Frederiksen, and, of course, the French President, the freshly elected French President Emmanuel Macron. There will be plenty of issues that are going to dominate bilateral conversations, from a post-COVID economic recoveries to the Ukraine war, which will, of course, be the big focus. This is what the government has said so far. A key meeting to look forward to in the day will, of course, be Prime Minister Modi's meeting with Olaf Scholz. And this comes after the two leaders had interacted last year at G20 when he was the finance minister. Germany, of course, has a significant proportion of the 1 million population of the Indian diaspora in Europe, which is why the Indian diaspora interaction will be something else to look forward to. Now, we've discussed what lies ahead in terms of the agenda, the action-packed agenda for Prime Minister Modi. But to discuss the significance of what this visit means, joining me now is Ambassador Sudhirti Devare, the former Indian ambassador to Ukraine and former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. He joins us now from New Delhi. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. I want to explore the significance of this meeting. India, so far, as we've been reporting, has exercised restraint when it comes to taking a side in this conflict. Given your experience, how will this visit of the Indian Prime Minister affect that equation?
Well, the visit is taking place at a very important time, both in terms of India's relations, bilateral relations with Germany, and then his subsequent visit to Nordic countries. Also, the events in Europe are of such significance that Prime Minister's consultations, discussions with Chancellor Scholz really assume importance. India and Germany have both, throughout the last 2-3 months, tried to see that the conflict in Ukraine comes to an end. There is a solution to this problem. Both German Chancellor had been visiting both Ukraine and Russia prior to the beginning of the war on 24th of February. And Prime Minister Modi had been in touch with President Putin as well as with President Zelensky.
Right.
So I think these consultations, with respect to the situation in Europe, in particular in Ukraine, are also of much importance.
Right, absolutely. Let's talk about his upcoming meeting with the new German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. As we know, Germany has a huge section of the Indian diaspora. There are events scheduled on that front as well. Tell us more about that.
Program, he reached Germany at their time, I think early in the morning today.
Right, he's in Berlin, yes.
Yeah, he's in Berlin now. And in the afternoon, his consultations, what they call the IGC, the intercom consultations with Chancellor Scholz will start. This format has been found very useful between India and Germany, where Prime Minister and some of his ministers will be consulting with German Chancellor Scholz and his ministers. This is also, I think, the first visit of Prime Minister with Chancellor Scholz in Germany, because up till now, we all know that German Chancellor Merkel has been in office for a long time. Prime Minister Modi and Chancellor Merkel had a very good equation. So I think this is, in a way, a new beginning of their relationship. But given the fact that India and Germany enjoy in-depth and a long-term relationship, we are, I think, celebrating also 70 years of diplomatic relations this year. I think I have no doubt the talks are going to be very substantive and significant.
Right. Ambassador, thank you so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us on WION World is One. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.